Revenge with Karen.
Maya knew something was off the moment her badge scanned green, but the elevator didn't ding. It just sat there, silent, waiting, like it knew what was coming. The building always buzzed with fluorescent hum and stale ambition by 9:02 a.m. But today, it felt like walking into a dentist's office right before the Novocaine. She passed Sarah from marketing, who gave her a weird half-smile and immediately looked down at her phone like it had just whispered national secrets. Then her Outlook pinged. Subject: Urgent HR meeting 9:15 a.m./conference room, see no context. No sender name, just a calendar invite with the warmth of a mugshot. Maya blinked. She'd spent 15 years in this building, grown from a scrappy startup hustler pulling 2 a.m. coffee-fueled contract reviews into the woman whose name still sat, if anyone bothered to look, at the bottom of the original enterprise licensing agreement that put the company on the map. But now, no forewarning, no one-on-one from her boss, not even a courtesy Slack. Just urgent. By the time she opened the glass door of conference room C, Marcus was already seated. No jacket, tie loose, smiling like a man who rehearsed this in the mirror and liked how he looked doing it. Maya, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. HR sat to his right, a woman she barely recognized, probably new, probably chosen for that exact reason. Thanks for coming in on such short notice, Marcus said. I'll get right to it. This is part of a larger strategic restructuring. Your role's being eliminated as of today. He leaned back, placed his fingers behind his neck. I know it's a shock, but you'll land on your feet. You're resilient. Maya blinked once, twice. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at him like she was watching a stranger sell her house on Zillow. The termination, he continued, is classified as an adverse action. Just a legal term, don't let it spook you. Adverse action. Her ears rang for a half-second. HR slid a manila folder toward her. We'll need your signatures today. Final paycheck will be processed by end of week. IT will collect your laptop by noon. Marcus grinned wider, like he couldn't help himself. Unfortunately, this also means your unvested equity is forfeit. I double-check your paperwork next time. Fine, Prince a killer. He actually chuckled. She looked at him, really looked at him. The same man who'd once begged her to come in on her honeymoon to fix a broken contract clause. Same man who used to introduce her at conferences as the architect of our foundational partner model. Now he sat there like he was sending back cold fries. Maya closed the folder without reading it. Anything you want to say? HR asked, overly cheerful, like she was offering a sample at Costco. Maya stood. No, she said, but her voice wasn't weak. It wasn't emotional. It was the sound of something sealing shut. Marcus gave a little wave. No hard feelings. Yeah, she didn't even blink. Just walked out, back straight, pulse steady. HR was still mid-sentence when the door closed behind her. By the time she returned to her desk, her inbox was locked. Slack access revoked. Her name gone from the company directory like it never existed. The office hummed around her, phones ringing, printers clicking, coffee brewing, and yet no one made eye contact. Not even Darren from legal, who owed her 3 career-saving favors, grabbed her coffee mug, a plant, and her USB-C charger. Not for sentiment, just muscle memory. 15 years of loyalty, and she walked out with less than what she'd brought in. Back in her apartment, she placed the plant on the kitchen table and sat in silence. The mug still smelled faintly of stale cinnamon creamer. Her phone buzzed, LinkedIn updates, a generic HR follow-up, one group chat message from a colleague that read simply, WTF. She ignored them all. Instead, she opened her personal laptop, logged into her cloud drive, typed slowly, Founders Docs Legacy Contracts. The folder was still there. Untouched since 2011. Inside, NDA, Early Seed Agreements, Partnership Frameworks, and one dusty PDF labeled, Enterprise Partner Licensing Agreement V1.4 Final Signed. She clicked it open. Page 47. Clause 11b. Font size 9. Verdana. The event of involuntary termination, determined to be an adverse action by the employer, all unvested equity shall fully vest and convert to cash value based on the latest company valuation. All conversion and penalty clauses shall execute automatically via designated partner protocols and require no additional authorization from employer at time of trigger. Meyer exhaled once through her nose. No smile, just recognition. Like an old ghost had finally knocked politely on the door. Marcus didn't know. He couldn't know, because she'd built this clause when the company was still 3 guys and a rented WeWork, and no one had touched the architecture since. She closed the laptop, took a long sip from her mug, and started making a list. The night was quiet, save for the slow hum of her air purifier and the occasional crack of her knees when she shifted in the kitchen chair she'd had since grad school. Aya didn't pace, didn't scream, didn't call a friend to vent. She just stared at the folder open on her laptop like it was a decades-old riddle waiting to be solved. She didn't need vengeance. She didn't need theatrics. She needed accuracy. The contract she'd pulled up was one of the original backbone deals from the company's infancy, a licensing agreement with a mid-sized enterprise partner that had since exploded into a Fortune 500. Back then, been the only one in the room who understood both the business lingo and the tech stack, which meant she'd built everything, structure, legal logic, executional architecture, from scratch. While the boys with buzzwords and beard oil pitched VCs, she had crafted the machine that made sure none of them starved. She kept reading. Clause 11b wasn't just a line. It was a fail-safe, a ghost trap she'd written after her first brush with startup volatility. The clause was short, clinical, and stunning in its simplicity. Hostile severance, herein defined as any involuntary termination labeled adverse action without cause, shall trigger full acceleration of all deferred compensation, vesting, and equity conversion protocols. Execution of such terms shall require no additional human authorization if employer systems have not been updated beyond compliance version 1.4. She nearly laughed. Never updated beyond 1.4. She'd seen the back-end code on a demo call last quarter, still running on legacy rails with her old commit messages intact. The clause didn't need permission. It didn't need signatures. It just needed to be triggered. She checked the metadata on the file. Last accessed, 2016. Last modified, Meyer L. Rodriguez. Date, 08/17/2011. Marcus's name was on it too, in the approval Back then, he was a doe-eyed director trying to impress their CEO with buzzword salad. He never read the fine print. He thought acceleration meant speed to market. It meant payout. Her fingers moved slowly, methodically. She dug deeper into her backups, pulling API logs, reviewing the external partner portal she hadn't touched in years, confirming that her original authentication keys still existed. They did. God help them, they still did. Original partner's financial gateway, used for settlement transactions, was still connected through an auto-auth script she'd written herself. She'd buried it in a compliance update no one had audited since the Series B round. She wasn't even angry anymore. She was surgical. Maya reached for her personal phone and pulled up a number she hadn't dialed in over a decade. Greg Rosenfeld, Financial Counsel Independent. He picked up after 2 rings. Rosenfeld. Hi, Greg, it's Maya Rodriguez. A pause, then a sharp exhale. Holy hell. I thought you were off on some executive yacht by now. No yacht, I have a situation. His tone shifted immediately. Talk to me. I need you to review a clause. It's legacy, but it was signed. And it might be active. She forwarded the PDF while they were still on the line. He clicked, scanned, and whistled low. This is rare. You baked the trigger into the contract and the system logic. Yep. Routes through the partner's API. Payouts on file. All hard-coded. No manual override unless someone rebuilt the whole stack. Did they? Not a chance. They fired me for redundancy yesterday and didn't even realize what they stepped on. He chuckled. This is beautiful. This isn't even litigation. This is administrative. I don't want court. I want execution. I'll initiate an exploratory memo and ping their finance gateway just to confirm your credentials are still whitelisted. I already did that. It pinged back green. No errors. Another pause, then admiration. Jesus Christ, Maya. You turned compliance into a Claymore mine. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Okay, he said, all business. Once the partner system confirms the trigger condition, adverse action language, we initiate soft execution. Payout will batch and run in segments, starting with equity conversion and followed by penalty fees. Total value, about $9.4 million, depending on share price fluctuation. He whistled again. I'll invoice you after the 3rd million clears. She hung up. No drama, no monologue, just a quiet room, one glowing screen, and a woman who had once been called paranoid for planning too far ahead. She navigated to the trigger module she'd written in her spare time, hidden behind a nondescript label. /settlement exec/archive inside. A dormant sequence waited. All it needed was proof of condition. She pasted the text from the HR email, Specifically the phrase, "This adverse action concludes your role," it matched the condition exactly. The system flickered. A light delay. Then the test line turned green. Trigger condition: MET execution status. Standby batch begins upon partner confirmation. She closed her laptop. The trap was armed. Let them pull their own pin. 2 hours after sunrise, Maya's inbox lit up with one final insult, wrapped in polite HR padding. Subject: final separation agreement action, required. She didn't even click it right away. Just sipped her coffee, scrolled through her news feed like it was any other Tuesday. Let the notification rot unread in the corner of her screen. When she finally opened the PDF, it greeted her with bullet points and condescension. A goodwill payment equal to 1 month of base salary. COBRA coverage she'd have to pay out of pocket. And a bland promise of a positive reference upon request, as if the company hadn't just tried to erase her like a typo. But it was the last line that sealed it. All remaining unvested equity shall revert to the company effective immediately. They really thought she'd just sign, like a fool, like a junior hire who didn't know how the sausage got made. Marcus probably smirked while drafting it, already imagining her signing with tears in her eyes and gratitude in her heart. Instead, Maya hit mark as unread, closed the tab, and opened her local console. Back-end infrastructure she'd built in the company's Stone Age didn't just handle customer data. It quietly tracked legal clauses embedded in contracts, obscure ones, the kind lawyers waved off and engineers refused to touch. She'd architected a dynamic clause monitoring framework that was supposed to be phased out in 2018. Spoiler, it never was. Too boring, too invisible, too Maya. Her code had teeth, and now it was biting. Internal system had already detected the keyword pattern in the HR email: adverse action, termination without cause, involuntary separation. That string, in that order, hit the tripwire. The internal flag turned hot. Then the system reached out to the external enterprise partner gateway using her still active API credentials. Those credentials had admin-level access, because in 2011, no one thought to restrict the woman doing the actual building. Refreshed the logs. Status update. External partner system, ping received settlement execution inquiry response. Acknowledged batch preparation segment 1, equity conversion queued. That wasn't theory. That was motion. The external partner system still spoke fluent Maya, and they remembered everything. The APIs had auto-batched the first segment of the settlement, converting her once-ignored, worthless equity into present-day market-valued shares. The second segment, cash penalties for hostile termination, was already in the queue, waiting on timestamp validation. The system didn't need moral clarity or permission slips. It just needed the right words in the right order. They gave her those words. She looked over at her second monitor, where Marcus's calendar feed, public-facing and lazy with permissions, sat wide open. He still hadn't revoked her access. Probably forgot she was on the old executive visibility list. Board review Q3 results. Attendees: Marcus Bell, CFO, General Counsel, Board Liaison, External Investor Rep. Location: Executive Conf Room B, 10 o'clock a.m., Thursday. 3 days from now. 3 days until Marcus stood in front of the board to spin tales of market dominance and proactive initiatives, and whatever else he pulled from his laminated deck of corporate buzzwords. And in exactly 3 days, final batch of the settlement payout would finish queuing. She could almost see it. Him standing in the room, swaggering through his update, when the CFO's screen lit up with an alert they couldn't ignore. Wire transfer initiated, from a gateway they thought was deprecated. With memo lines referencing a clause none of them remembered signing. Clause 11b, full acceleration authorized. She could see the moment Marcus's confidence cracked, his voice catching. Room turning against him, one head swivel at a time. 3 days. Meyer opened her phone and checked her bank app, not for money, but for the silence before a storm. Nothing yet. Good. That meant everything was happening exactly as it should. Clean, automated, irrevocable. Like she'd planned. Back on her laptop, she opened a notepad file, typed a single line. Let the board ask the right questions. She saved it, closed it, then took her coffee out to the balcony, sat in the cool air, and watched the city keep moving like nothing had changed. They'd think this was revenge. It wasn't. It was math. Tuesday, 11:42 a.m. The fourth floor smelled like burnt coffee and stale air conditioning, which meant finance was about to have a bad day. It started with a blip. A low-priority warning on the Treasury dashboard, small corner of the company's bloated financial system that nobody looked at unless there was a quarterly close or an audit breathing down their neck. The alert didn't scream. It nudged. Flagged transaction batch pending approval origin. Partner settlement gateway ID, MR. Legacy 01 total amount. $9,402,110.82 USD memo line. Clause 11B full acceleration. Alex, finance intern, was halfway through his second Red Bull when he saw it. He stared at the screen for a second, rubbed his eyes, then refreshed. Still there. $9.4 million queued for transfer, with a tag he didn't recognize and a routing code that hadn't been used in years. He raised his hand. Darren, can you come take a look at this? Darren, middle-aged, mid-tier, mid-caring, shuffled over. He leaned in, scanned the screen, and squinted. Partner settlement gateway. What the hell is that? Alex shrugged. I think it's legacy, but it's trying to move funds, big funds. Darren clicked through the logs. Partner ID matched one of their oldest enterprise clients. The settlement path was technically still active, though no one had used it in over 5 years. And the memo line, that's what froze him. Clause 11B, he didn't know what it meant, but legal would. 10 minutes later, legal did know. And legal was not calm. 2 floors up, paralegal named Jasmine forwarded the log file to the general counsel's office with a subject line that just said, "Is this real?" That's when the calls started. First to IT, then to Treasury, then, inevitably, to Marcus. Maya, miles away and barefoot on her kitchen tile, got the first ripple in the form of text. "Ben, Ops, did you file a lawsuit?" She stared at the message for a moment. Didn't answer. Instead, opened her private email where alerts from her personal monitoring script still funneled in like clockwork. 1 unread. Status update, partner gateway ping confirmed. Batch flagged total, $9.4 M plus. Memo, clause 11B full acceleration. Escalation level 3. She sipped her tea. Let the silence settle in. Ben's bubble popped up again, because someone just used your name to move almost $10 million out of Treasury. No, Maya thought. Not someone, the code, the contract, the arrogance. She opened the board member list and cross-checked who would be in Thursday's Q3 meeting. All the right players, all the right dominoes. And now the first one had tipped. Meanwhile, Marcus, sitting in his corner glass office with 2 monitors and a framed motivational quote about execution over excuses, was waving off the panic like it was lint on his shoulder. Legacy cruft, he muttered, barely looking at the report Jasmine had just handed him. It's just old code from Maya's era. Probably a sandbox error. But it's pinging the actual financial gateway, she said, and the system authenticated it. No sandbox, this is live. He scrolled lazily through the logs, saw her name, saw the tag, shrugged. She doesn't work here anymore. She doesn't have access. No, but the code she wrote does. And it's executing. Marcus sighed, leaned back, and picked up his phone. Open IT. Tell them to unplug whatever relic this is. But by the time IT got there, the damage was already cascading. Because Maya hadn't written a virus. She hadn't hacked them. She'd written a rule. A very old, very real rule, approved, signed, logged, and now it was running. The thing about automation is it doesn't care about feelings. Maya watched the texts come in. One from an old marketing VP asking if she'd leaked anything to the press. Another from legal, obviously sent to the wrong Maya, requesting clarification on her retention clause. She turned her phone over, let it buzz against the counter. The kitchen clock ticked. The afternoon sun warmed the tile. She pulled open the drawer, grabbed a pen, and scratched a small note on a sticky pad next to her laptop. Let them run in circles. In the finance war room, someone finally asked the real question. Where the hell did that clause even come from? No one had the answer. But Maya did, and so did the timestamp. Wednesday, 8:14 a.m. The company lawyer hadn't slept. Jasmine, the paralegal with a photographic memory and caffeine addiction, was already on her 3rd espresso when she dragged a battered accordion file out of the storage closet marked archive. Do not destroy without GC approval. It was there, wedged between expired stock agreements and a yellowing set of bylaws from 2012. Enterprise Partner Licensing Agreement, V1.4 Final. Signed. She flipped through the pages, jaw tightening. The language wasn't vague. It wasn't open to interpretation. It was clear as a bullet hole. Clause 11B. In the event of involuntary termination determined to be an adverse action by the employer, all unvested equity shall fully vest and convert to cash value based on the latest company valuation. All conversion and penalty clauses shall execute automatically via designated partner protocols and require no additional authorization from employer at time of trigger. And below that, the names. Meyer L. Rodriguez, Director. Strategic Partnerships, Marcus A. Bell, Director. Corporate Strategy, both with time-stamped e-signatures. Both filed into legal record on August 17, 2011. The general counsel stared at the document in silence and calmly said, "Call Marcus." By 9:03 a.m., Marcus had slammed into conference room D with 2 assistants, a half-tucked shirt, and a growing sheen of panic sweat. "Tell me this isn't binding," he said, waving the printed clause like it was radioactive. "Fully executed, never rescinded, and your digital signature is on it. It's ancient. This was before Series A. Nobody enforces these things anymore." GC looked at him like he was a child playing with a lighter near gasoline. "It's not about what's enforced. It's about what's automated. Maya wrote this into the system. It's live, and it's already initiated." Marcus sank into a chair. "How much are we talking?" The lawyer tapped the folder. "Roughly $9.4 million. Cash, equity, penalty fees. Could be more depending on how her shares index, because the partner gateway authenticated the request using legacy credentials. Credentials you never revoked. We don't have a legal block." Someone in the back gasped. Marcus stared straight ahead. His mind wasn't in the room anymore. He was already picturing the Thursday board meeting. The investor rep, the CFO, the impossible questions. He stood up suddenly. Emergency finance sync. Now. Meanwhile, in a sunlit apartment 2 ZIP codes away, Aya finished watering her plant and checked her email. 6 new messages. One from Marcus. Subject, urgent, let's discuss resolution options. Body, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Let's talk this through. Maybe there's a way to unwind the clause. 2 from HR, chasing signatures she'd never give. 3 from people pretending to check in like she hadn't been ghosted for the last 6 months. She didn't open any of them. Instead, clicked on the HR email from Monday, copied the body text, highlighted the key phrase. "This adverse action concludes your employment effective immediately." She dropped it into a clean document, attached it, sent it to Greg, her lawyer. Subject, confirm trigger language clause 11B, no explanation, no commentary, just what mattered. Within minutes, Greg replied, "Clause fully triggered. We're green across all segments." Final settlement auto batch queued. Aya closed her laptop. Her pulse didn't quicken. Her breath didn't catch. She felt no high, just gravity, control, precision. She stood, poured herself another cup of coffee, and opened her window. The city below moved like it always had, oblivious, fast, loud, pretending things were fine. But in one corner office with a fake ficus and too much glass, Marcus was staring at a dashboard that now displayed a very real countdown. Settlement execution final batch queued T-22 hours. There was no cancel button. No override. No apology big enough. He'd already triggered it. With one phrase, adverse action. And Maya, she was done talking. The first tranche hit her account at exactly 10:32 a.m. A precise, silent ping on her phone. No fanfare, just a simple notification. Wire deposit. $2,731,488.00 origin. Partner gateway settlement batch 1/3. Maya stared at it for a long second, then locked her screen without a word. The world didn't tilt. Her hands didn't tremble. Her body didn't register a single sign of adrenaline. She was so far past that now, floating somewhere beyond the reach of fear or satisfaction. This wasn't justice. This wasn't revenge. It was gravity doing what it always does, pulling everything toward what it was always meant to be. Meanwhile, across town in the company's headquarters, Marcus was unraveling by the minute. The moment Treasury confirmed the outflow, he'd stormed into the IT war room, barking orders like a man swatting hornets with a spreadsheet. Shut down the API relay. Cut the gateway link. Roll back the system time if you have to. I don't care, just stop it. But the system didn't listen. It couldn't. Maya had built it with hard rules, not suggestions, and she designed it to handshake directly with the external partner servers. The trigger had come from them, not internally, which meant by the time anyone noticed, it was already executing on rails no one inside the company could access anymore. One engineer, barely old enough to remember flip phones, stammered out the truth. "Sir, we don't control their release queue. The partner already initiated their end of the transfer. It's finalized." Marcus stood there, frozen, like the air had turned into glass around him. He turned slowly, pulled out his phone, found Maya's number. He hesitated for one full breath. Then he called. Maya answered on the second ring. She didn't speak. His voice cracked from the start. Maya, listen, there must be a misunderstanding here. I mean this clause was never meant to, he trailed off. She let the silence hang just long enough to feel like gravity. Then, calm as Sunday morning, I didn't misunderstand anything, Marcus, but I suggest you read clause 11b, he swallowed audibly. Look, maybe we can renegotiate something. Maybe this can be reversed. I'm willing to, you're not willing, she interrupted, still cool, still poised. You're desperate. There's a difference. Maya, come on. This is scorched earth. Don't want to be known for this. She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, what I'm known for is building the thing that's currently emptying your treasury. Goodbye, Marcus. She hung up. He stared at the screen like it had betrayed him. Back in the executive wing, legal was in full triage. They had flagged every document she'd ever touched, pulled every revision history, subpoenaed no one but CC'd everyone. But none of it mattered. They weren't dealing with a breach. We're dealing with an execution. A clause that had been signed, ratified, buried, and now resurrected by their own mistake. The partner company had already released the first tranche based on their legal obligation. The next would follow in 12 hours. The final in 24. Nothing they filed now could stop it without them confessing to breach of contract, which would expose them to litigation, far worse than $9.4 million. Someone in legal, likely the only smart person in the room, put it into words. She didn't take anything. She was owed it. We just didn't read the bill. Marcus sat with his head in his hands. Elsewhere, Meyer opened a drawer and pulled out the same notebook she'd used in 2011, frayed at the edges, still smelling faintly of whiteboard markers and cheap startup pizza. She flipped to the back page, scribbled a new line under the last one. $2.7M received. Batch 1. He didn't celebrate. She didn't post about it. She didn't breathe a word, because the next deposit was queued, and the board meeting was tomorrow. Thursday, 9:59 a.m. Executive Conference Room B was chilled to a perfect corporate 68 degrees, lit with soft LED panels and the dim glow of MacBooks reflecting anxiety. At the head of the table sat Marcus, rigid in a navy suit that still had the dry cleaner's tag safety pinned to the lining. Next to him, the CFO tapped out the last slide of a quarterly forecast that looked more like a prayer than a plan. The board members filtered in, names that existed more in wire transfers than in actual speech. 2 investor reps from the West Coast, one from London, and the founder himself, who hadn't shown face since pre-IPO, now slumped in a chair nursing a latte like it owed him money. At precisely 10 o'clock, the CFO stood, cleared his throat. Let's begin. He opened with standard damage control, slight underperformance attributed to sector volatility, a few positive metrics massaged until they sounded like wins, and then a sharp turn. We did encounter a one-time systems issue related to some deprecated legacy infrastructure. A misconfigured endpoint triggered an erroneous wire, which our finance team caught in real time. He clicked. Screen showed a vague diagram of back-end systems and a blurry graph that went conveniently nowhere. It appears the issue originated from a dormant script tied to a now former employee. Marcus nodded too quickly. It was a back-end bug, the CFO repeated. Residual logic from early product builds. Engineering is investigating the root cause. That's when the door opened. No knock, no badge swipe. Just a calm, deliberate entrance. Aya walked in wearing slate gray and absolute silence. Her heels clicked like punctuation across the tile. Every head turned. A few mouths opened and never closed. She didn't ask for permission, didn't make eye contact with Marcus. She walked directly to the table, placed a manila folder in the center, and opened it slowly. Inside was a printed contract, slightly yellowed, corner folded. It bore 2 signatures. One hers, the other, Marcus A. Bell, the original. She slid it forward until it sat in front of the general counsel. The clause was already highlighted. Clause 11b, full acceleration upon adverse action. Maya straightened. I won't take much of your time, she said, her voice clear, level. I'm not here to debate. I'm here to make sure no one blames legal. She looked directly at the founder, then the investor reps. You had all the documents. You just didn't read them. Room fell into that peculiar kind of silence where people are still breathing, but afraid to exhale. Marcus's throat bobbed. A single bead of sweat traced down from his temple to the edge of his jawline. His hands gripped the table hard enough to bleach his knuckles. The CFO cleared his throat again, but this time the sound died in his mouth. One of the investors leaned forward and read the clause aloud. Then, did this clause trigger automatically? Maya nodded. The contract routed through the partner's gateway. My credentials were still active. No one revoked them. The system did what it was designed to do. Another investor turned to Marcus. And you signed this? Marcus didn't answer. Maya tilted her head just slightly. His signature's right there. You can run it through DocuVerify if you need. A different voice spoke up, deep, calm, and lethal. The founder. Marcus, he said, barely above a whisper. Why didn't you flag this before you initiated her termination? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. His face looked pale, like someone had drained the toner from it. She was redundant, he croaked. The founder chuckled dryly. Apparently not. Maya didn't smirk, didn't twist the knife. She simply retrieved the second page from her folder, a clean printout of the HR email she'd received, the one with adverse action typed in bold font like a loaded gun. She laid it beside the contract. That phrase in that context triggered the clause. Legal doesn't need to scramble. They followed procedure. You didn't. The silence doubled. She placed her palm flat on the folder, then slid it all back toward herself. No NDA binds me anymore, she said. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here to make sure nobody pins this on the wrong people. Marcus reached for a water bottle with fingers that trembled. The cap clattered to the floor and rolled under the table. Maya didn't flinch. She made eye contact with each board member, one by one, like she was measuring who understood the magnitude and who was still catching up. Then she nodded once and turned to leave, but not before glancing at Marcus. Not a glare, not a smirk, just a look. The kind of look that says, I gave you every chance not to drown yourself, and you still chose the lake. The silence that followed Maya's exit was the kind you could grind your teeth against. A heavy, suspended vacuum. No one moved, no one touched their laptops. The contract lay there on the polished walnut table like a confession written in blood. Marcus sat very still. The tip of his index finger tapped against the side of his chair. Once, twice, 3 times. Then his eyelid began to twitch, barely perceptible at first, but obvious enough for the founder to glance his way and raise one brow. The CFO finally cleared his throat again, this time a weak sound. We believe this was an isolated contract. We're reviewing exposure, but then it happened. A soft chime. The dashboard on the wall, connected to Treasury for executive transparency, flashed a blue notification. It didn't yell. It didn't blink red. It simply said, wire transfer $9,402,110.82 executed a timestamp. An origin point. And one final line beneath it, memo, clause 11B, full acceleration. Marcus's body jolted as if slapped. He lurched forward, palms flat on the table. What does full acceleration mean? He said, voice cracking, eyes darting from face to face. The general counsel didn't answer, didn't even look at Marcus. He just leaned back in his chair, took off his glasses, and exhaled. Not dramatically, not in defeat, just acceptance. Like a man who'd been warning about rusted pipes and now watched the basement flood in real time. The founder spoke again, voice level, almost curious. Is this legally binding? Jasmine from legal opened her mouth, but it was Maya's voice they heard. From the doorway, she hadn't left yet, been standing just outside, waiting for the wire to drop. Now she stepped forward, calm as ever, her heels soft on the carpet. It was binding, she said, the moment he said adverse action. The phrase echoed like a gunshot in the room. She didn't raise her voice, didn't point fingers. She simply let the words sit there, heavy and irrefutable. A statement of fact, not vengeance. Marcus looked like a man mid-fall. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His jaw moved, his tongue twitched, but nothing useful escaped. Maya turned to the founder. Your team had 12 years to clean this up. They didn't. The system did exactly what it was built to do. The founder just nodded slowly, like a man watching karma work its way through the plumbing. Jasmine handed the printed contract to the investor from London, who scanned the signatures, the clause, the timestamp, looked up and asked no one in particular. How many others like her have contracts with similar phrasing? No one had an answer, because no one had bothered to look. Maya didn't linger. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her name would show up in every compliance training for the next decade. And Marcus was already breaking apart from the inside out. You could see it in the micro movements, the twitch under his right eye now pulsing like a short-circuited wire, faint sheen of sweat returning to his forehead, the quiver in his fingers as he reached blindly for his water again. It tipped. The bottle rolled off the table and hit the floor. No one bent to retrieve it. Maya's eyes flicked to the screen one last time, the transfer confirmation still glowing. Then she turned around, nodded once to Jasmine, and walked out. No applause, no thank yous, just a quiet woman in total control, leaving behind a table full of powerful people who had finally, irrevocably, read the fine print. No one followed her down the hall, not the assistant who used to bring her double espresso with oat milk before 9 a.m. Not Marcus, who was likely still frozen in place, tethered to his chair by the weight of his own incompetence. Not the founder, who'd said nothing more after the wire transfer alert landed like a thunderclap. Badge reader at the security exit blinked red. She didn't pause. Just pushed the door open manually and stepped into the atrium, badge deactivated, access revoked, but gravity on her side for once. As she reached the glass double doors leading to the front plaza, she paused. Not for drama, for accuracy. She turned halfway, just enough to catch Marcus through the transparent boardroom wall, still slouched in his chair, face pale and unfocused, one hand loosely cupping his forehead like it was the only thing holding his skull together. "I believe your exact words," Maya said, loud enough for the room to hear, or "this adverse action ensures you leave with nothing." She tilted her head, eyes locked on him through the glass. "Looks like you misunderstood the fine print. No rage, no heat. Just a final record correction from the one person in that building who had always read every line." She turned back toward the sunlight. Automatic doors parted with a hiss. Outside, the air was warm with the dry bite of late summer, and the sidewalk glittered faintly from a recent cleaning. Traffic hummed, indifferent. Somewhere a food truck generator rattled softly, and a woman on a bench argued with her toddler about juice. Maya walked past all of it, her steps even, her shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. She wasn't rushing. She didn't need to run. Her life wasn't burning behind her. It was closing like a well-wrapped file. At the crosswalk, she stopped, pulled out her phone, one new notification. Wire transfer complete, final batch settled. Subject, acceleration complete. Amount, $6,670,622.82 total, $9.4 M. She stared at it for one long beat, then tapped archive. No need to screenshot. It was already real. Another buzz followed. Marcus A. Missed call. Marcus A. Bell 1 new voicemail. She opened the call log, paused, tapped block contact. A small confirmation bubble popped up. "Are you sure you want to block this number?" She tapped yes. The bubble disappeared, so did he. Maya slipped her phone into her purse. No tears, no breathless relief. Just a silence inside her that felt like truth. She stepped off the curb as the crosswalk signal changed, walking calmly through the late morning sunlight. Weight of 15 years finally gone from her spine. No employer, no contract, no NDA. Just a woman who had been told she was disposable, now walking into the rest of her life with $9 million and the receipt to prove it. Behind her, the building stood still. Somewhere inside it, they were just beginning to understand what had happened. She was already gone. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.